Hello and welcome to the Trust Factor Podcast, the only podcast that guarantees your success when you implement its divine age-old teachings. Tomorrow, we finish out the week with another of our interview series, but this one promises to be different. It's different because we're talking to Hadida from Magen, Herut, Canada, the author of Hate 2.0, the Israel Zionist activist who has spent his entire life fighting, quite literally fighting, with his hands and his feet and whatever implements the offenders bring to the fight. He's the guy who has spent a lifetime fighting and doing the hard, heavy lifting to defend Jews, at least Toronto Jews, but now today, even more than that. He's known in many communities around the world that have large Jewish populations, but he's a Toronto Jew, grew up in Toronto, and he spent his life, his early life, in the background, in the shadows, fighting for the Jewish nation. And today, he does it in the front lines. He does it very publicly. You know him. You've seen his face. You've heard his name before. His approach, my friends, and the reason this is going to be different is because up until now, I've been laying out a foundation for you, an idea, a Torah idea that says, Lo alecha melacha ligmor. It's not on you to finish the job. The only thing that we're capable of, the only thing that we control, and you'll hear them talking about this tomorrow as well, is making the effort. Getting up, getting out of bed, putting one foot in front of the other, and moving forward. That's the only decision and action that we control. The outcome is out of our hands. You know this. You've heard me say it umpteen times. The beautiful part of our religion is that we are not a cookie cutter religion, and every single one of us has our own relationship with Hashem. You're going to hear his relationship and why the end, the outcome for him is so much more important in the line of work that he involves himself in, where he deals with life and death. He deals with security issues on the street. If he turns an eye for a second, his job is done. If he's negligent for a second, suddenly it could mean the end or serious harm to the individual who he's providing protection for. So that concept of Lo alecha melacha ligmor, the extent to which that applies in each and every one of our lives is different. Not only that, but even within our own lives, every situation is different. The effort that you put forward in every situation is going to depend on the situation itself and where you're holding in your relationship with your Creator. So we're going to get into that with somebody whose life almost doesn't allow him to say the end, the outcome is not in my hand. We're going to have that conversation tomorrow, my friends. It promises to be a great way to close out this week and give you some insight into what happens. We don't see these things, my friends. You and I don't deal with this. The average person does not deal with the level of hate and anti-Semitism and violence that is being planned and orchestrated every single day by bad actors in the world. Aaron deals with them every day. Let's get into it. We're also going to close out this week today with this conversation that we've been having about proof. You want to build your relationship with your Creator? Give me something I can sink my teeth into. God's not going to pull up and say, hop into my car, let's go for a drive so I can explain to you how I run this world. Let me prove to you, like he has some requirement to be able to prove to me. In order, if he wants me that I should continue to do his work, then he needs to prove to me. It's ridiculous. But at the same time, he understands that we're programmed that way, that we need something to sink our teeth into. We need tangible proof. Why? Because we're living in a physical world. We're living in a material world. It's not enough to just run on the feelings. It's not enough to just run on emotions. We can't just sit on our couch and ask for something to come to fruition. You have to get up and take action. We're in a world of action and material. So God knows that. He created it. So what does he do? He gives us proof. He gives us, like Rav Saperman said, he gives us eyes and ears to understand and use our common sense and our knowledge to understand that there's no possible way in the world that, number one, he doesn't exist, or that, number two, he doesn't intimately run this world every second of our existence. Yesterday, we talked about animals. Today, we're talking about fish, about the animals that live in the waters. The Torah talks about it. There's nothing that the Torah doesn't talk about, by the way. Absolutely nothing. From the second that this world was created until its end, and everything that transpires in between is encapsulated and addressed in the Torah. It's a manual for life. So obviously it will address all of these things. It talks about the animals that live in the waters. It doesn't say the lakes, the oceans, the ponds. It says the waters, meaning all the waters. And what does it say? How do you know if you're fishing one day and you catch a fish? How do you know? You don't know what type of fish it is, but how do you know if it's kosher? How do you know if you're allowed to eat it? And just like we said yesterday, when it comes to Judaism and the rules of judgment and kosher, we need to have two witnesses, two kosher witnesses. We had them yesterday by the animals, hoofs, split hoofs, and chewing its cud. When it comes to the fish, we need to have scales and we need to have fins. That's it. You see those two signs on the fish that you just caught? Cook away. Enjoy the fish that you just caught. Now again, I ask you the same thing I asked you yesterday. Some people are foolish enough in this world to think that Moses made up the religion or that the rabbis made up the religion. It's shockingly foolish. One of the ways, I've given you multiple ways to know that just this week. Another way to understand that is that if Moses wanted to give over a religion, if he was a guy who was just looking for power and wanted people to follow him, he just needed to say scales and fins. He didn't need to continue to give any more information. He could have stopped at that, and every one of his followers would have understood, if I catch a fish, it's got scales and fins, I can eat it. But it goes further. The Torah continues on, and what does it tell us? It tells us the following commitment, my friends. If you catch a fish and you find that it has scales, then you can eat it. But why? I thought you just said that it needs to have fins. And that's true. But the Torah tells us, even though it didn't have to, that if you found a fish that has scales, then you can be guaranteed that it has fins. But the opposite is not true. In other words, you may find a fish, such as a shark, that has fins but doesn't have scales. So if you caught a fish and as you're reeling it in, another fish comes along and chews up 98% of that fish and leaves you with just a fin with a little bit of meat on it, there is no way for you to know if that fish is kosher, because just because it has fins does not mean that it will have scales. But if you caught a section of that fish that has scales on it and you don't see any fins, eat away. The Torah gives you a guarantee that you will not find a fish that has scales that doesn't have fins. Now I'm asking you, why? Why give me that guarantee? Why put your neck on the line? If you're Moses, are you that foolish? If you're flesh and blood, if you are limited by time and space and to a little strip of land in the Middle East and a little body of water, are you going to think that you have knowledge of all the creatures that live in all the waters of the world everywhere? Today, my friends, today in 2025, we are going to new depths of the ocean. Every year we go down deeper and deeper and deeper. There are dark, hidden areas of the ocean that we may never even get to. You know, we get down recently, we've gotten down to new depths, and at those new depths, we're seeing animals, fish life, that is completely transparent. It's black, it's dark down there, you can't see anything. And as a result of that, they don't need any pigmentation. And so you can see right through these fish. You see all of their organs, all of their inner workings, because they're at these crazy depths. We have yet to explore so much of the waters of the world, and yet somebody's going to come 3,500 years ago and guarantee me and you in 2025 and in 2125 or whatever is to come that we are never going to find that fish that has scales but doesn't have fins. And more than that, just like I said yesterday, what about the fish farms? Today, everything's coming out of a fish farm. What about genetic engineering? What about creating new hybrids of fish? What about the scientists who couldn't wait to be able to disprove the Torah? All they need to do is create that fish. Just give me one that's got scales that doesn't have fins. Conversation's over. It's over, my friends. Everything that we know and love comes into serious doubt and question. And you know why it hasn't happened? Because the same God that created everything controls everything. Everything that ever was, is, or will be. And so if you want a powerhouse at your back, if you want the master of the universe who also created you and gave you the manual on how to succeed in this life, all you need to do is pick it up and learn it and then start to implement it. Thank you for spending time with us on the Trust Factor podcast. If you heard something today that moved you, save this episode and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss upcoming conversations that challenge, empower, and uplift. And if you're on social media, connect with us. Leave your thoughts. Drop a quote that resonated with you. Hashtag the Trust Factor podcast. Until next time, keep growing in your trust. Keep living with purpose. I'm Jesse Revivo, and this has been the Trust Factor podcast. Thanks for listening.